This is CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast with Business Solutions MVPs Joel Lindstrom, George Dubinsky, and Sean the CRM Hobbit Tabor. This week we're going to be talking about some exciting news happening this month on the CRM Audio Network. But first, let's thank our sponsor KingswaySoft. KingswaySoft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise customers from over 70 countries and regions rely on KingswaySoft to integrate data with various business systems in order to drive their business efficiency and fully leverage their information assets. KingswaySoft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GP, SL, as well as many other applications such as Marketo, Dropbox, QuickBooks, and Salesforce. Whether you need one solution or several, KingswaySoft works easily within the SSIS platform to make your integration processes as easy and quick as possible. Many of their clients have seen 3 to 10 times greater data integration performance after switching to the SSIS integration platform. We thank KingswaySoft for being a sponsor of CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. All right, gentlemen. Welcome to a new week. It's Eclipse Day in North America. We have the total solar eclipse this afternoon. Everyone's going crazy. I've got my glasses. I'm ready to go.
Okay, but do you expect, apparently there was in 70 and 79, there were eclipses in US, and there was a traffic jam and traffic jams all around, and that was before the internet.
Yeah, we're expecting millions of people to come into the area. It's crazy. It's crazy times. But anyway,
there's already emails going back and forth on eclipse viewing parties. So
have you seen XKCD cartoon on searches on eclipse and how searches are localized to the eclipse path in US? Well, the map was actually put together by, I think Washington Post put together a map of people Googling for eclipse and how search is geographically localized to the eclipse path. Like people in small towns, in eclipse path, that suddenly they're searching for eclipse, and how searches for eclipse actually eclipsing searches for the 2016 election. It's growing faster. Searches for eclipse growing faster than searches for election in the upcoming in the election when it was upcoming. So you can take a look. It's XKCD. It's like a family.
We'll have about a minute and a half of total darkness this afternoon. Looking forward to that. So, Mr. News Hobbit, I think we have some news this week.
We have a couple, yeah. It's there's one interesting on a field service tip. It's kind of fun now that we're in this new environment where Microsoft is releasing so much functionality so fast. Where 3-4 years ago it felt like we were always behind. Now we're on a more of a leading edge, and now it looks like Salesforce is trying to catch up in some ways. So they announced that they're adding new features to Lightning, which improve field service capabilities, such as being able to take photos of parts and have the AI visualize that. Things like that, and then they're adding, in addition to that, in Lightning, they're adding console apps, which seems like a competitor to Power Apps. So they can build these apps on top of the Salesforce Lightning platform. They can have it specific to functions and features, just like Power Apps. They're building Power Search and Path and Kanban capabilities to visualize your data, all things that we already kind of have in Dynamics, which is kind of interesting.
And I guess to be fair, there are existing Salesforce field service customers, but there's one or two large ISVs for Salesforce that do field service, similar to what Field One was with Dynamics. So there are Salesforce does have a field service market. The difference is they're bringing that functionality in, following the lead of Dynamics, catching up.
Yep.
Console apps, it sounds more like competitor to MS-DOS Shell or PowerShell at most, rather than Power Apps. It's like, what would you rather have, console app or Power App? Oh, give me some power, please.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we talked about Salesforce a lot in one of our last episodes. I don't want to talk about them anymore.
Hold on, aren't you guys missing the biggest news of all? That NDA has been lifted. We now can actually show people the bits and pieces of the upcoming release.
Well, Captain Jump Ahead. No, we hadn't missed it, but let's talk about it now. Good grief. Yes, George, you are correct. The NDA has been lifted, and you can show. That happened a few days ago. But yes, we can now talk about it. The NDA has not lifted, though, however, for Business Edition and any information you may know about that. So keep that in mind. But it's a nice revelation to be able to share that information on V9 that we've been enjoying for all these weeks and months now.
Oh, and my favorite little feature that now that we talk about it, which I put in the show notes here, is, and again, there's a lot of people talking about the big things, but one of the things that jumped out at me that I didn't catch the first time I saw the preview is we're actually getting a real email rich text editor now that we've asked for a long time, and specifically in the customer service hub, which I think somewhat makes sense because that customer service and people responding to cases is one of the key areas where people use the in-application email editor. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. Haven't played with that specific part yet, but I think that's good. Again, something that has been on our wish list for a long time.
Indeed.
Can you paste images into it?
I don't know. We'll try it out. If it really is a rich text editor, that should work. So we'll try it out.
And also, on another piece of news from Microsoft, we now have an online management API for 365 customer engagement, which is very cool, especially if you're automating builds. If you can, let me see. Hold on here. You can manage multiple customer engagement instances in case of the multi-org setup. You can have an automated creation of a custom demo engagement instances, and I got these tied up. But there's also now new functionality where if you're automating builds, or you can go ahead and key in a backup. You can program a backup to go fire off of your org through the API rather than having to go through the admin center, which is very cool. I think that's a great feature, especially when you're dealing with production instances. Being able to manage that programmatically through VSTS when you have code check-in or when you have a new build to move to production, having that capability is huge, I think.
Yeah, that is a big deal because that was we had many enterprise on-premises customers who had the whole thing scripted out where when they every 3 weeks it would refresh their sandbox environments and moving code totally without anybody touching it. Especially now you can trigger the backup. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Last item we had, you can now migrate your CRM 2011 knowledge base articles to Dynamics 365 knowledge base articles. There's a tool on GitHub now.
But George had a tip of the day a long time ago where he wrote how many lines of code to do that?
About 10, I think. I'm just searching for it now. Let me try, but there are a couple of things. First of all, we did have a tip of the day how to do that, and I think I was using PowerShell, wasn't I? And then
and that still may be the way to go, George, because this what was announced is still not officially supported by Microsoft.
Well, PowerShell is not officially supported by me either, so I'm not sure if it's any better. What I'm saying is not a big deal.
George's tool will not only move your knowledge base articles, it will also give you Tim Tams.
Well, and
if you use it,
the big key.
If you find me at somewhere in North America in September, October, then right. Please, by all means, claim your Tim Tam. I'm not sure. And Daniel Kingsway Soft also had an article on migrating knowledge base articles. It wasn't a big deal, but I suppose what's the big deal is like something coming from official source, recognition that it's something that people want to do and people need to do if they need to move away from the old KBs. Then
and remember it was the old KBs were announced to be deprecated, so sooner than later it's going to become a big deal.
And I say
correct, yeah.
I say
oh yeah. Tip 569. That was ages.
I say bully for Microsoft, because if they're going to deprecate functionality, even if there's third-party ways to do it, they need to provide a supported or a semi-official way to do it. If you're going to take people's functionality away, even though Tangy might have something in the XRM toolbox, that is not a really good customer-facing answer, that we're going to take your functionality away and leave you without a boat. But I think if there's better ways...
My apologies for misleading you guys. It's 36 lines of code.
Oh, that's about 10 lines over my limit.
And 35 over mine.
5. Minus 5 comments, minus about 5 blank lines. So we might be able to do it, Joel. Might be able to do it. Now, what I like about PowerShell, in fact, is that it's like what you see is what you get. This kind of, it's not compiled. It is somewhat, but it's interpreted, so it's so easy to modify and move on without recompilation and quickly adjust things. Oh, you don't like that you can do it. You want to remove some information from content, add a couple lines of code, just rerun and you're done. So it's really easy. So if you're into admin area, definitely something worth looking at. I think xrm.data PowerShell library released by a couple of Microsoft guys. It's also on GitHub. It's a very good tool for manipulating data, great addition. Effectively, whatever you can do through the API, you can do through PowerShell. Basically means everything. Manipulating data. So you can write actually admin programs. The primary target would be admin, because you can feed records, say, from Active Directory straight into Dynamics 365. Joel, didn't you have an article or something about someone asked about migrating users from Active Directory to Dynamics or synchronizing? Yeah, you had the tip about internal users.
It was a comment. The post wasn't about that. It was about should you create contacts for users, but somebody asked the question, how you could do that. And there's numerous ways to do it. SSIS can connect to Active Directory. I've heard of several other tools that can do it. And that's where people want to have a way to have a contact set up for your users automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I'm saying, if you're doing it in bulk, let's say you're seeding it, it literally, again, it would be like 10 lines in PowerShell, because there are modules for Active Directory. There are modules for Dynamics 365, PowerShell modules. So it's easy to put them together and kind of feed from one into another. And the same, there are modules for Office 365, so you can, suss some information out from Office 365. And so it's really a powerful tool. So if you're into admin area, that would be one of your primary tools would be PowerShell. So I'd say if you admin, learn it. So,
and one place that's really helpful is when you've got a lot of turnover. I'm dealing with a client now that has probably 50 to 70% of their staff turns over every year. So they're all the time adding new users, turning users off. And that's where if you're adding 2 people a month, it's not worth your time to automate it.
What? Yeah. But what kind of, if you don't mind, what kind of business they in? Churning 70%? Most of your budget will go into training people.
No, I mean, look at the stats. I've actually been digging into this, actually writing a blog post about it that'll be out in the next week or so, which is there are certain industries where turnover is extremely high. Insurance agents typically last less than a year, for example. Customer service...
Too stressful or someone kills them?
Inbound customer service rep turnover is 30 to 50%. Route sales, things that are pure commission, auto sales, those are all north of 50% turnover. And it's because they're highly stressful jobs. Some people are good at them and stick around for years, but the average turnover is 50 to 75%.
Yeah, no, I don't argue that there are industries with a high turnover. What I'm saying is that when you implement Dynamics 365 into that environment, wouldn't a large part of your IT budget go into training those upcoming people?
Yeah, it does, and it changes. A lot of businesses have these really rosy goals for the future. It really limits what you can do, because if you got so many people starting all the time, you have to choose simplicity over anything else. It has to be easy to onboard. It has to be dead simple, next to no training. You have to have frequent training classes, training videos, learning path. That all helps. And hopefully, the idea is use Dynamics to reduce your turnover. But the reality is, if you're in one of those industries, you're probably it amplifies the stresses of a normal Dynamics deployment by 100.
Yeah, so you find in learning path helping people using it?
In some cases, it still has a lot of glitches. And so I find the sidebar a lot more useful than the actual guided learning path, because, it's so specific to where your things are that if you move anything, it's easy to, and the drag and drop is not smooth right now.
It sounds like you go into the burger place and you order a burger and fries, and then come out. So, how was your burger? And the response is, fries were good. That means the burger was nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Nowhere near good, right? Fries were good. So you're saying, yep, learning path, yep, sidebar is good.
But I mean, things like video content in the sidebar or some exposed that way that makes it easy to see that, and super simple to use. That's what it takes. And like I said, hopefully it'll reduce the turnover.
Yeah, the problem is people don't realize that it's only good video content that works, and it's expensive to produce. If you want it to be good and helpful, it's expensive. So
there's only so many Derek Bormans out there.
There's only one. Yes, who's now officially Microsoft's most valuable. So he's now MVP.
So let's talk about some news for CRM Audio. We don't often talk about behind the scenes here, but we are growing. We have 2 new series that are going to be starting. We really are a network now, not just 1 or 2. We'll have 2 more podcasts starting. One is going to be...
we should call us as Dynamics 365 Bazaar.
Yes.
People talking all the time.
And we're actually only like 4 episodes away from our 100th podcast, too. So, if you count every episode with Scott Sewell and Matthew Anderson and special episodes from the MVP Summit, lots of milestones coming out. So the first one is going to be coming out next week, and that's Mark Smith. And Mark, those of you what's his Twitter handle? NZCRM guy, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, he is
NZ.
Yeah, NZ. That's right. He is. He ran a large Dynamics practice. I say ran because I just saw the news he resigned today on his world travels. But he ran a very large Dynamics practice in Australia, and he is focusing in this series on the business of Dynamics, what it takes to run a successful practice. Not something we normally talk about, so it complements what we do really well and shows another angle of the Dynamics business, how to work with Microsoft, how to hire the right people, how to structure projects, things like that. And then we also have another series, and that Mark's is going to be every other week, so we'll be alternating it on Mondays along with CRM Audio. So not this week, but the next week, the next Monday will be Mark's. And then we're going to have a once-a-month podcast with Mr. Tabor, along with Ivan Kurtev, who is a field service guru, technical architect. And it's going to be a once-a-month podcast called At Your Service. And that is going to be focused on service, field service, project service, customer service, kind of going deep into the service side of Dynamics. So I think we got the board pretty much covered.
That sounds like a handful of podcasts. Well, I'm looking forward to Mark's podcast because, well, let's be honest, none of us has ever ran successful practice. We worked for some. Some of us may not be called practice in particular. So it would be good if you planning to expand your business and do some enterprisey things, then it's definitely would be a podcast to listen. And field service, it's quite a growing area, particularly with IoT and the rest. That would be a very interesting topic as well. So let's see what comes out of it.
I think the whole way that Microsoft and its relationships with partners has shifted. That the angle of how do you work with Microsoft in this changing world is going to be a really interesting topic.
Definitely. Speaking of, all the released news and the new release, I think might have been one of the first guys in the world publicly show some of the new upcoming features. That was interesting because we got the word that we can now show bits and pieces of release, upcoming release, on our morning. So it was Saturday morning, and on that same Saturday, I was presenting at CRM Saturday Sydney. So that's the great, that's the great series that's going around the world, CRM Saturday. So check out the one that is near you. So it's crmsaturday.com. So we had one in Melbourne and one in Sydney. And on one in Sydney, I showed a couple things. I only managed to show multi-select pick lists and virtual entities. But other than that, we've got CRM Saturday, what's upcoming, what's now? Sydney, 26th of August, Oslo, September 16th, Milan, September 23rd, Paris, and then Toronto and Mumbai are coming. So that's a great lineup in CRM Saturday. So come and see CRM experts talking, usually local CRM experts coming and talking about all things CRM. We had the entire day in Sydney, which went extremely well. So it was well organized, and I presented on my favorite topics, and lots and lots of other people presented. There were 2 streams, so just come and check your local one. Speaking of which, we've got also CRM UG Summit coming up, or Dynamics 365 or D365 UG Summit. Definitely, it's in Nashville. Definitely a place to be. We can talk at that summit about a lot of things, but if you just come in for a couple days early, are you coming early, Joel?
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I need to check my travel. I think I'm coming Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday is official. I think Wednesday opening. Anyway, so CRM UG is typically 2 days of training prior to the conference. And I'm telling you, you should come. Like, I'm looking at lineup of the training. It's on Monday and Tuesday, and it's ridiculous. So we've got Power BI, financials, MCT certifications, portals, administration, admin black belts, processes, Power Apps, integration training, productivity training, dashboards training, JavaScript training, chatting training. I'm doing portals. I'm doing advanced customizations. I'm doing something else. Automating your Dynamics 365 day. That's kind of interesting. That's a new topic. What do you think? I just wanted to run it by you. What do you think? Do you think that users underuse automation features in Dynamics 365? Or not aware of?
So when you're talking about automation features, are you talking about workflows and flow, or what?
Everything. Everything. Little things like you can do to automate your daily tasks. Again, if there is something you do like 2 minutes a day, right, and it will take you 10 minutes to automate the process, you probably should do it. We did.
Yeah,
talk
and
about
I mean, I think
like in general, you should automate.
So if you take automation
tasks.
at the lowest level, I would count things like keyboard shortcuts in there. Or I would count the copy link,
including.
And I bring that up because this is one of the things that people take advantage. You almost forget they exist. And then I got in a conversation with someone who said, "I don't want to have my fingers leave the keyboard. How do I use CRM?" And I pulled up our tip of the day, which was I think in the first 50 about keyboard shortcuts, and said, "Here's your keyboard shortcuts."
That's a useful one, but I also wanted to talk about things people afraid to touch. Like you ask average user, have you checked the workflows? Oh, no, that's for administrators. No, it's not. Right? You can create your own private workflow. How many people know that you can scope it so it's yours and yours only?
I gotta say, I find the workflow editor is just a little bit too kludgy for average users to adopt or really to figure out.
It is a bit intimidating.
Maybe to do a simple send email workflow or something like that, but to go much into
that's exactly what I'm doing.
Good, you got that. You got the copy. You got the copy a link. You got the what about Outlook? I mean, there's things like inserting templates into Outlook from the Outlook app. You can absolutely, the new one. And that's the thing is, Mr. Salesperson, you find yourself always answering the same question from 50 customers a day. Create an email template. And a personal email template. Then when you track the email with the Outlook app, insert that template, and you got that blurb of text in there. You could save a lot. Why
don't you come in on Tuesday morning and do your speech?
All right, I'll see if I can make it. Fortunately, it's just on the verge of being driving distance for me, so I'd probably be driving in because if it's a 5-hour drive or less. Typically, if you fly, it takes longer.
It's always who's the one always late for the party? Yeah, because I'll be there in a tick, and then 5 hours later, it's like, oh, I'm still driving. So I know you're gonna be late because you live next door. Right. So there will be this conference is upcoming. There will be Microsoft Ignite. That's a big one, so I'm coming to that one as well. So, and then there will be Directions, which is traditional in the Vision territory, but with the business edition, there will be a lot of talk about our part, our world, the CRM world. Do you find naming a bit intimidating? The new naming convention, before it used to be CRM for sales, and you're done, right? If you're talking about sales part of CRM. Now the official name would be something like Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, Enterprise Edition, so we scope the product, and then you have to sales.
Yeah, I usually stop at customer engagement because, again, we typically we deal with more plan users than sales or specific customer service users. The one session I'm looking forward to, other than yours and Sean's and ours, is Andre Butenko's. I was talking to him, and he's going to do one about automating testing, and he was giving me some insight on some new tools that sounds like will make automated testing, which is like the holy grail of CRM deployments. They want to, well, let's automate the testing and save time, but then they say, oh, it'll take months to develop and script the tests, and it's going to cost more to do that. But it looks like there's some tools out now that are going to make that much more approachable. So I'm really looking forward to that one, because that's a really common ask from customers that usually ask about it, and then they find out how hard it is, and then they decide not to do it, or they settle for the out-of-the-box Control-Shift-Q9 or whatever that is, to just the built-in performance monitor.
Yeah, testing there are three parts to it. The one is your code testing when you're talking to API. Let's say you've got the plugin and so forth. So you need to test that. So it's kind of back-end deployment and back-end testing.
Yeah, when I push this button, did the plugin fire?
Now, then there is a yeah. So that's one part. Then another one, you've got code in JavaScript. So what happens there? That's a challenging one to test, to run tests and mock your JavaScript. So particularly if you're writing in TypeScript and stuff like this. So maybe we should get back on podcast Mr. Labar to talk about TypeScript and maybe automated testing in JavaScript in general.
And that's what I think especially people from clients where the IT department is running it, they want to automate everything and cut time and not have bodies testing it. You can't get away from the human element, though. You can't get away from the actual usability.
And that's the last bit I wanted to mention. The nightmare of testing is testing UI. We used to have a testing tools like what it was, Visual Test or something like this, where it would take the screenshots and compare screenshots. But that was like 15 years ago. These days, I don't know what you'd be looking for, but Microsoft is changing UI and user experience, right? And in upcoming edition, and moving forward. So that's where a lot of these tests go out of
and that's where you can test and everything can be functioning and test that it functions as written, but then Matt the sales manager doesn't understand what the field label means and he can't figure it out, and the test isn't going to catch that.
Correct, yeah. So it's going to be challenging, and that's where would be interesting to see how tools develop that are substitute for the user experience testing. Because in terms of user experience, layout is important, but what's more important that the button that you saw yesterday somewhere on the screen, at least still there on the screen, and when you press it, it does the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more about composition, so it's more about pulling apart your user interface or walking through the DOM model, if you wish, in a browser, and sort of pulling it apart and trying to analyze elements that they're still present, the field is still there, the content of the field is still there. So that's exciting and interesting thing. So I hope that Andrew is going to cover that.
Yeah, I think the smoke testing and performance testing is something that definitely can be automated. Show me what happens when 5,000 people hit it and we have a data load going on. That kind of thing.
We do a migration. We're migrating, 5 million contact records. What should we test for? I said, it was on premises. So I said, how about doing select count star from contact and see if it comes up with approximately the same count. If you've got 5,755,221 contact in your original one, it should be within, take or leave couple hundred contacts in the new one. Certainly, it shouldn't be more. But if your count comes up as 3 million, you know that something went horribly wrong, right? So that's kind of one of my favorite tests is saying, like, when you migrate and stuff, make sure that the record count is roughly the same, or at least like it should be under. You can't get more clients. Again, if you get 6 million, it means something went horribly wrong and you're getting duplicates all over the place. So that's my favorite testing part. So yeah, it's busy. How's people waiting, like in terms of in the business community or your clients community? How's the anticipation? Is there anticipation for the new release? What people afraid? People anxious? What's the story?
I mean,
there?
I've heard anecdotal details about people who are holding off. We do have some deployments that are going on right now that the launch is going to be after, say, January of next year, and so they're planning on going live on V9 and just factoring that into their go live. I mean, the nice thing, I guess, is since it's close to the end of the calendar year, you don't have a lot of people who want to go live with something in December. It's usually if you're going to go in US, you're going to go live by November 15th, or you're going to wait until middle of January or February. And so
that's the same here. If you don't go live in November, then you're done.
Right. So again, I think
if you didn't find the job by November, start searching in January.
I think the biggest angst is on the small to mid-size companies, with Business Edition being the variable, because that's where enterprise customers are going to get enterprise, and we know enough about the Enterprise Edition to say, user experience is different and better and more readable, and there's some cool new stuff. There's these virtual entities and other things like that, but your user experience is going to be pretty much the same. So there's no real reason in waiting. We can always turn that stuff on when it's ready for you and when you're ready for it. But if you're a smaller, and again, that's not the sandbox that we normally play in, so I'm not seeing that. But I've heard from other people who are working with smaller to mid-sized customers that that's probably where the biggest angst is right now.
Small customers, they don't particularly care about which release they're in, as long as it does the job.
Right, but if there's a licensing difference, is what I'm saying, is if if your options are buy Enterprise now or when Business Edition comes out, if that's going to be cheaper and meets our needs, I can see why that might be a consideration.
I'm not sure if you're hearing me breathing in, breathing out. I'm trying to calm myself down before I talk anything about licensing. So, look, with the Business Edition, I'm not sure if any of the existing CRM customers, regardless how small they are going to move to Business Edition as
no, I don't think they will.
To me, Business Edition, is for new customers who coming into CRM world, they taking a look and saying, Business Edition seems to be going to be the one doing the job. So Business Edition it is. Whatever it's going to be, like, I don't know, $40 or $45 per user. Existing customers, no matter how simple they are, the customizations definitely exceed any limitations that Business Edition would put in place. So I don't see any of the existing customers ever moving there. So currently my small customers are sitting on the SMB specials, the 3 years programs. Right. So we'll see what comes out of that in the end. So we'll cross the bridge when we come to it in 3 years or 2.5, whatever's left out of it. But generally, they sitting on that. The pricing is about the same what it used to be on that program. Slightly more expensive, but you can always justify it with portals and new features and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting. Would be interesting to see in 3 years where we end up with the small customers, like 5 users, 7 users companies. Are they going to scale down and move to Business Edition? Is Business Edition going to expand and embrace those customers? Is going to be another, currently it's called grandfathering scheme, or grandparenting scheme, where you apply old licenses to new users, but it's going to be like a grand uncle SKU. So, right. And going through all the relationships.
My perspective is it's actually been kind of nice, this longer rollout, and not only having one release this year. It actually feels like I've been able to catch my breath a little bit more. There's a lot to absorb, but it's not like we have 2 releases. And in some ways, I kind of like that. It's kind of giving me a chance to focus on some of these areas a little deeper.
You know what? I hear from the consultant and customizer point of view, and from admin point of view, little things coming or trickling through. It's kind of nice to have. I beg to differ for developers, because API set is not something that you want to have. Just 30% of that. You really want complete API set. That's one of the challenges, for example, people struggling with web API, because the parity, it's kind of 99.9%. It's kind of this mysterious uptime that is never 100%, Same with the API coverage. Web API is almost there, but there's just a couple niggling bits and pieces that don't quite work. And until they do, we can't really fully switch to the new API and throw away the old one, right? And that's upcoming. The release 10, so the new release is version 9, and come release 10, the good old SOAP API endpoint will disappear. So that's going to be interesting. Let's put it
mildly.
Now
we had version 8 to version 9. That was basically 2 years, right? So the question is, are they going to have a version 10? Is that a year or is that 2 years?
No, I think realistically, at best, we're looking end of next year. That's my guess. I'm not using any internal knowledge or anything like that. In case I do, subconsciously, I'm breaking the case.
How far have you gotten with virtual entities? Have you figured out how to wire it up and get it actually working?
No. When I was talking that I showed to people virtual entities, I literally just fired up UI and showed them the checkbox saying virtual entities, and the whole audience went, woohoo! That was enough.
Because we don't have any documentation yet, so once we have that, we're waiting with bated breath for that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to a series of articles. Sorry, just to wrap up, series of articles of what not to do with virtual entities, because I'm just looking forward to people shooting themselves in the foot and wiring up Microsoft Access databases to Dynamics and saying, "Hey, I exposed my old 20 years old crap."
Or all of a sudden everybody's sensitive medical records available to them or something.
Correct. Yes. So.
All right. Well, one of the things I'm going to be playing more, I'm a guinea pig for the LinkedIn Sales Navigator for my internal organization, so I'm going to be putting that through its paces using real data. So that's fun.
Oh, so you're one of the rich guys who can afford it.
Somebody else is affording it for me, so that's even better.
Well, that's right. That's one of the disadvantages in my world, that somebody else is me. So if I have to afford something.
I also saw a demo of what's new with Inside View, with Insights powered by Inside View, and I gotta say they're stepping their game up. There was kind of a rumor that Inside View was no longer going to be part of Dynamics 365, which was not true. It was basically in EMEA. They were talking about it was going to be part of it, but then it wasn't. But anyway, they have this new thing called Refresh, which is data enhancement, where it goes beyond just looking things up and manually syncing them, where it will actually enhance your database, very much like what Salesforce has had with data.com. So it looks like the data options, they're not taking a competitive stance against LinkedIn. They're taking a Me Too stance and will coexist with LinkedIn. And I think it's a good strategy.
Hold on. So remind me, Inside View, is it about... I'm confused with all the insights that going on. Inside View was one of the first insights app.
Yes,
right.
And that's a major thing, that name which Microsoft chose for them. Their Inside View. Microsoft chose that name, and they now Microsoft is calling everything Insights. So you really have to be clear, because I brought up Insights powered by Inside View, and people said, wasn't that relationship email thing or customer insights, right, or all this stuff?
And then there is organizational insights as well, which is I started to use. It's actually quite nice. I need to write a couple articles about it, because it gives you insight into your user base. So which is
I like it too.
Nice.
It's come along. Initially, it was very limited. Now it has a lot of good insight around, not just who's using it, but data issues and plugins and performance and a lot of good stuff.
Oh, very good stuff. Yeah. On that note, hold on. Aren't we now on Apple News?
Yeah, we are. So, CRM tip of the day is. We don't have CRM audio on there yet, but we probably will soon. So Apple fans can subscribe in your favorite newsreader.
It's actually very nice. Did you see how nice it looks?
Yeah, it does. It does. It
looks very, very professional. I have to say that I rarely say about our joint work that it's professional, but this one looks awesome.
Yeah, I like Apple News. Apple News a lot.
I use it, so I might as well read your posts in there. And it's fast. It's fast. So it's really fast to load, so it's brilliant. I'd say that, it's the way to go. So if you're using Apple News on iPad or iPhone, definitely look up for CRM Tip of the Day. We're not trending yet. Donald Trump is trending, as usual.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast, with Business Solutions MVPs George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean Tabor. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC. Follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or any place else that fine podcasts are available. You can email us at voice@crm.audio with questions or topic suggestions. Special thanks again to our sponsors, Kingsway Soft and Alexa CRM, and thanks to Dale Simmons for providing our music.